Hello everyone, Bella Malloy here, host of Seek Travel Ride, and welcome back to another midweek mini episode of the show where I aim to fuel your stoke and wanderlust for bike adventures. Now recently I've had the absolute pleasure of featuring the stories of people who are about to take their adventures on and have then shared updates of their journey along the way. And this week is going to be something a little bit similar but with a twist. This week I'm interviewing Sam Thompson, who is about to take on a stupendous challenge which will see him do a full circumference of France. It's the Tour de France Randonneur route, a route of 4,800 kilometres, and Sam hopes to complete it in 13 days. Now, this challenge is taking place from the 15th of June, which is just days away. So I am super stoked to catch up with Sam just before he sets off, and you're going to listen to my interview with him now and also find out how you can watch this adventure play out in real time as well. Let's get to the interview. Hello listeners, today on Seek Travel Ride I'm being joined by ultra-distance cyclist Sam Thompson. Now, Sam is on the verge of taking an absolutely monumental challenge on. It's called the Tour de France Randonneur. This is a permanent brevet, which is a throwback to the early days of the race, when so-called Touriste Routiers rode alone, unsupported and unpaid, chasing nothing but glory for the sheer love of the sport. So, what lays ahead of Sam with this challenge? Well, he's going to be riding the entire 4,800 kilometre route, which will take him right around the perimeter of France. And it involves a knee-breaking 45,000 metres of climbing, and in order for the ride to be official, he also needs to make sure he passes through 61 set control points. His goal is to complete the ride in less than 13 days, and he's going to be fully self-supported, riding in line with the rules of this historic brevet. Now, Sam's ride is starting on the 15th of June, which is literally just a few days away. So today, we're going to find out what's motivated him to set out on a challenge like this, how he's prepared physically and mentally for the ride ahead, what is exciting him most about the journey, and also how you, the listener, can get involved as a dot watcher and follow Sam's progress all along the way as he ticks over the kilometres, fuels himself with a mountain of croissants and turns his pedals all the way around France. Sam Thompson, a big warm welcome to the show.
Hi Bella, thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm super excited, Sam. I get to talk to you about France, boulangeries, fueling, bike rides, vistas. What a challenge you've set for yourself.
Yeah, it's feeling quite real now. It's been in the making for the best part of 2 years that this has been on my mind, but this time felt most appropriate. So it's been a good best part of a year in terms of the actual planning and getting myself logistics in place. And yeah, quite looking forward to getting going. I think the easier part may be getting riding. All I have to think about is turning my legs, eating and sleeping each day.
It's funny, Sam, I have interviewed lots of people on the show, some ultra cyclists like yourself, some people who just, seem to be perpetually living on a bike, riding around the world. And what you spoke about there, that the simplicity of it, of you don't need to think about anything other than moving forward, where you're going to eat, where you're going to sleep, where you're going to ride. There is that element to it. But I want to know, a step back, how did you find out about this route in the first place? I'm a Francophile. I love cycling. I moved to this country, and I must admit, because of, being a Tour de France viewer, but I had never heard of this brevet before until your challenge popped up in my feed. How did you find out about it?
Now that you asked, I can't remember exactly the first time. It may have been that I'd heard of when Christophe Alaguer had ridden it in what is now the fastest recorded time. It must have caught my attention a couple of years ago, because that's when I really started looking into it more, finding out about what the rules are, what it entails. But for a while, I've obviously been racing in ultra endurance races for 8 years now, and I've come to this sport in a way from not just the racing side, but enjoying really touring in the self-supporting nature of that. And I really like allying that, both that sense of adventure, exploration with the competitive side. And also along the way, I've been really inspired by people who I've taken on record-breaking exploits. I think the Around the World is the reference point there. I remember reading Mark Beaumont's first book back 15, 20 years ago about his first Around the World record at a time. And if you compare that to where we are now in this sport, it's just miles apart. But that idea of having a purpose and more than just a race in itself, there's a sense of completeness with this route, that you are circumnavigating the whole of France. In a way, it seems a shame to do it as quick as possible, but it's that part of it motivates me as well. I like to push myself physically, mentally, to know what I'm capable of. And I think that's what stuck out in this. It allies both that racing side, that sense of exploration, and seeing more, or the most part of this country, which I've come to really love.
It does strike me, like you said, sometimes it's a shame to think that you're doing it so quickly. The other thing that comes to mind for me, though, Sam, is that because you are doing it so quickly, or aiming to, your experiences are different as well. And so you're experiencing the country in a different way. So, and I don't think one's right or one's wrong. It's different. And, you know, you're aligning it with your own different personal goals as well. I do love that idea of the completeness, because listeners, I'll put a link up in our Instagram page so you'll be able to see actual Sam's proposed route. And it really is a map of the hexagon there, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's many parts along the way which are going to be really interesting to go to, because I've been there in the past, cycling in other events, in other trips I've made, and so it's going to be some sense of familiarity in that part. Other parts is going to be a total new discovery for me. So I think there's always going to be some part along the way which I have some reference to, or something to look forward to there. Especially with, I know people who are in sort of all six corners of the country, and hopefully at some point I'll be able to see some of these people along the way, or be reminded that these people have helped me out with checking my route, with giving me some advice along what to expect in those areas. So yeah, it's that mix of the new and the familiar.
And there's something about being in a place that you've been to before. There's like that sense of nostalgia about a place which actually helps spur you on. I had that feel last week. I was on roads that I hadn't ridden for 2 or 3 years, but the nostalgia that hit me when I was on those roads again, flooding back memories of what it was like here, and remembering, oh, that's right, I used to go to, this boulangerie here, or that's where I found the water fountain. And there's something about that. It's not a tangible thing, but the nostalgic element, I think, definitely adds a mental boost as well.
Mm-hmm. And it'd be interesting to see in places in different contexts as well. For example, the Pyrenees, I've ridden over the big passes in the Pyrenees a couple of times, but as it was during a race, half of them were at night, so I didn't get to see very much. I've done the Tourmalet twice. It was dark by the time I've got to the top both times, so it'd be interesting if I see that during the day this time. And there's other areas as well where my first bike touring trip, I was in the southwest of France, and I'll be going through similar areas there. Yeah, I think there's something to look forward to in each part of this route.
Yeah, it's almost like a ride down memory lane for certain sections of them as well. Can I say, I live 50 kilometres from the summit of the Tourmalet, Sam. I've been in a very privileged position of riding it many times, or maybe sometimes doesn't feel so much of a privilege when I've suffered riding up it many times, and I've done it in all weather. And I hope you do get it on a magic day. Something that actually does happen often when I've ridden on the Tourmalet is you get the beautiful cloud inversion as well. So you get that feel of you're actually climbing up through the cloud, and you're at the summit and you're just looking down at a sea of clouds, and it just makes you appreciate the monumental height you've climbed with your bike there as well. There's an awesome cafe bar at the summit which actually has a whole heap of the bicycles used in 1910 to summit the Tourmalet, and that always gives you a fair sense of nostalgia, which would bring the route back, because, it's called the Tour de France Randonneur, and back in the day when the Tour de France literally was a ride around the circumference of France, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Well, it used to be a true Tour of France. And that was one of the things which has inspired me around how I've, you mentioned in the intro about the Touriste Routiers, that really reading about them, finding out about what they did alongside. So you had the professionals who were part of teams. Touriste Routiers were essentially pack fillers who, it was part of their holiday. At the end of each stage, they had to fend for themselves. They had to find something to eat. They had to go and find somewhere to sleep as well. And it really struck me how similar it is to what people do in ultra-distance races now.
Yeah.
The distances they're doing each day are similar, having to be self-supported. Maybe there's an element of, in the race itself, it's slightly different, but everything else around it is very similar. So that sort of, there's an element of romanticism there as well.
The original ultras.
Yeah, perhaps. But, well, I think they were carrying less with them, whether that's for better or worse. So that's sort of the image which was really stuck in my head, and to sort of treat what I'm doing here on the same principles as they are. Because the organisation itself, how this is run, it does leave it open for having external support. But this is something which I've deliberated how much I really want to take advantage of that. The only specific rule against that is not to have a following car. But technically, you could have someone in the camper van meeting you at the end of each day. You could sleep in there. You could have them meet you along the route. But that's not what I enjoy about this sport. I think this supported side is a different challenge to that. It's very valid. But what I really like is being there on my bike with all I need for however long period of time, and figuring out the logistics around that, which I think adds the extra element which makes this sport more than just a fitness test. It's around having the smarts, being well prepared, and then putting that to play in difficult situations, and stuff's going to happen which I haven't predicted, and I'm going to have to deal with that. So I have to be prepared for what could happen, and then also be prepared for the unprepared. And it's something which I really like to look at in a positive way. After the first day, I don't know what's going to happen. So instead of trying to plan for everything, I've got to be prepared for everything which could come up. So it's that sense of excitement of stepping out into the unknown, and I can make this experience I can make it into the experience I want for myself.
I want to dig into, you know how we were talking about it's a map of France, and we were talking just earlier about nostalgia and a trip down memory lane in some areas. What about the areas that you haven't been to? Which are the places that you haven't been to yet on that, the map around the circumference that you are super excited about?
To be fair, I think the areas I'm most excited about are the ones that I've been through before, in terms that they are the more interesting places in terms of what I enjoy. I love the mountains, and I'm familiar with all the Pyrenees I'm going through. I'm reasonably familiar with, and the parts in the Alps. There's only a couple passes which I haven't done there, so it may well be that the areas which are slightly less well known, perhaps. I think the sort of Jura area just north of the Alps, that looks quite interesting. I'm not totally sure what to expect there. And then maybe sort of coming up the west coast as well. Maybe a lot of that. I think the southwest maybe doesn't have the best reputation around the Landes and
the endless forest.
Yeah, but I quite enjoyed going to Brittany last year, and it's a lot of Caspat, a lot of up and down, a surprising amount of elevation than what you'd expect. But I think the whole region there is a really nice place, and they put a lot of butter in their viennoiserie, which is going to be something to look forward to.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I've joked already a couple of times about boulangeries and croissants, but you are very much a connoisseur as well, right?
Yeah, indeed. Some people question whether that was my motivation for moving to France to have better access to boulangeries and viennoiserie.
It still blows my mind after living in this beautiful country for a number of years. Just every single one has so many great options. None of them are ever bad. I've not been disappointed, but like they're so cheap as well. Like I still can't get over that aspect of it.
Yeah, I don't take for granted. I've got a couple of very good boulangeries locally, which does spoil you when you then turn into a connoisseur and you come across a disappointing one. Then I'm not too happy in those situations.
No, I mean, my local boulangerie does this thing of like buy 3, get 1 free. And I'm like, €3 and I've got like 4 croissants. Like this wouldn't even be one in Australia and it's amazing. Anyway, we digress. But when you were talking there with Breton and Brittany and, you know, the lumpiness of that, I found that when I was riding in Normandy, apart from the actual coast, it's beautiful rolling countryside. And to me, as a fellow mountain lover, I really realised that I love a mountain climb. I love one that I'm on for 2 hours. Maybe I love it more after the fact. I'll admit to that. But the rolling scenery seems to be something that I struggle less with than the dead flat roads. What about you? Because in ultras, you're obviously thinking and setting yourself, you know, a monumental challenge of 4,800 kilometres in 13 days or less. You're doing a lot of kilometres a day. How do you find the dead flat roads? Like, do you find them harder to overcome? Do you find that you yearn those, that, you know, you can just sort of get into a meditative rhythm through them? Like, what will you find challenging around that side of things?
Yeah, it's something I've struggled quite a bit in the past, but it's something I've really worked on in especially the past couple of years. I'm really fortunate where I live. I've got some real good variety, so I can do a lot in the valley where you're never dead flat, but you can put in a lot of consistent riding on very even gradients, and it's something which I identified as a limiter for me. Both, as you rightly say, it's both the psychological and potentially the physical side, because you're not changing position much when you're on a dead flat straight road which with no changing gradient. So that side means any imbalances with your bike fit are gonna show up. That's where sores, nerve damage can come up. So it's something which, it really shows up in the imbalances there. And the physical side, I've done a lot of work on riding these bits quite hard over shorter periods of time, because I find that really helps. And then when I'm on these types of roads on an all day ride, just knocking back that intensity feels a lot easier. I'm used to that riding with purpose on these. I find that's what I maybe did in the past. I found a climb, I could put out more power, feel physically stronger on it, but then come a flat road, I revert to noodling along. But now I feel like I can ride with more focus on the flat roads. Still, it's not the most interesting. You get a headwind and it can be very annoying. But I think it's the mindset you take to them as well. And also remembering that you're making good progress. Yeah, for most of the time, if the conditions are well on those roads, you can be moving along at a faster speed. So just to appreciate that. And then when the mountains come, you can then appreciate them even more.
You know, with ultras, Sam, there has been this discussion around emotional support and, you know, with an unsupported ride and how much that extends to and what level of support people might or might not be able to accept from people on the side of the road. You were mentioning there how, you know, with the rules are so open in yours, you can't have a follow car, but you could choose to have a support vehicle that you could hand clothes off to, get food from, sleep in and stuff like that. You're choosing not to do that. But say someone sees you and wants to, I don't know, hand you some water, hand you a drink or those sort of things, or ride next to you. Is that allowed during your ride?
Yep, those things are totally allowed in the rules. And this is, again, something which I've deliberated myself. And I think the way I term this is I want to be self-sufficient, but that doesn't rule out some support from others in terms of, and I think the way I distinguish this is if someone wants to give me something or come and ride with me, I'm not going to solicit this, basically. I'm not going to say to someone, meet me at this point, give me this. But if what I'm doing interests people, makes them want to be involved in some way, then I want to accept that and celebrate that and use this as an opportunity to involve others.
Mm.
come back to that distinction. I won't be soliciting things, but I do want to leave myself open to accepting things. And it's very unlikely this is going to make the difference of me completing this or not. If someone, say, gives me a croissant from the side of the road or comes and rides with me for a few hours. I also don't want this to be, I don't want to be as strict on myself as potentially I would be in a race with more specific rules on this.
It's an interesting one because I feel there are some ultras that are maybe shifting away from that total strictness, potentially. And it's something I've thought about before. So I think there is an element where there's an argument with the black and white stuff saying, fair's fair and, everyone has to be open to the same opportunities, and I can understand that. The other part of me goes, everybody is gifted the same amount of serendipity sometimes as well. And, those beautiful serendipitous moments of someone I had it actually last week. I was at the base of the Col de la Croix de Mort in the Pyrenees region, and I was looking at what was ahead, which isn't a really hard climb, but with a couple of weighted panniers on a bike, and close to 40 degrees, it was hard enough. And I obviously just stood staring at the sign for a bit longer than normal. And before I knew it, I watched this old man go out from the road. He crossed the road with like a pair of loppers, like clippers in his hand, and he cut something from a tree. And then I sort of didn't think anything of it, looked at my trip computer to see what was going on, and then I got a tap on the shoulder, and it was this beautiful old man, let's call him Jean-Paul, and Jean-Paul handed me a bunch of freshly ripened cherries. And that was a moment of serendipity. And maybe in an ultra that's I can't accept anything on the road, but in what you're doing, that's totally acceptable.
Yeah, and it comes down to sort of my personal principles, and I've written a bit on this. There's going to be an article, it may even be out by the time this is published on the Restrap website, and there's also on my Instagram as well. Sort of I've given myself 5 main principles on how I want to treat this. And just to clarify as well, all forward movement I want to be under my own steam, so I won't be drafting off anyone else if they're riding with me. And I don't sort of want my sort of rhythm to be influenced by others in that way. I think I'm very happy for people to come and ride with me, but I'll be stopping when I need to and so on. So just to sort of bear that in mind. And also in terms of like arranging accommodation, I don't want to use like a virtual base camp in terms of asking someone to book accommodation or find things out for me. I want to do that myself. It could well be, I've had some people say to me, if you're here, then you can sleep at my place and so on. And I think if it so happens that I'm going to be sleeping there anyway, I think I'm happy to accept that. But yeah, it's this balance with me, because it's not all about trying to break this record. And because if it was, then I could, like you were saying, get a caravan to follow me around, handing me up everything every however many kilometres, and taking advantage of all that. And I think, say that I do set a fastest time and then someone next year takes advantage of all that, then I'm happy with that, because I've gone about it in a way which feels right to me to do this. And I think that's the mindset I'll have into it, that I want to have a great experience first and foremost. And that does involve me wanting to get the best out of myself. All I can do is go out and ride as many hours in a day as possible, which is sustainable over this period of time, eat enough, sleep enough, and do the same again for the best part of 2 weeks.
What about the control points? I mentioned there's 61, I think. Mm-hmm. So these are 61 places on the road where you have to pass through. And I think, is it a case that you have to take a photo there, or you have to get something stamped at a certain point if that's available for it to be verified as officially you've done the route?
Mm-hmm. The organiser prefers that you get a stamp from a business. I believe most places in France. Well, I was talking to a French person earlier who said maybe it's not as common anymore, but all businesses in France are supposed to have a tampon, a stamp.
Yeah, paper is king here too, right? So yeah. For anyone dealing with French bureaucracy, note that mentally.
And always carry some cash with you in case you come to a village.
Always. And even just for the baguette vending machines.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Have you used one of them before? I know we were talking about pizza vending machines before we recorded, but have you used a baguette vending machine yet?
I've got a story about this.
This is what the pod's about. Go.
I was doing a race last year, Trans-Iberica, and despite the name, we went across France. So I was going across the Massif Central about 3 a.m. I did have plenty of food with me, but it wasn't the most. I was basically craving the first boulangerie that I came across in the next few hours, but this was Massif Central, Diagonal de Vide, so I wasn't expecting much. And then I was going through this village and I saw this like lit up beacon to the side, and so I slammed on my brakes, and turns out it wasn't just a baguette vending machine, it was a boulangerie vending machine.
Oh my God, you have hit the mother load.
Well, that's what I thought, but I got close and there was only one thing left in it, and I didn't quite see what it was, but I sort of jabbed away and it accepted cards as well. We talked about cash.
Whoa.
This one took a card. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, so I got whatever this was. Just for context, my favourite viennoiserie are almond croissants. And so me saying that, guess what was in these? There was
no way.
2 almond croissants were there, the last thing left in these vending machines.
This was fate.
Made my morning, yeah.
I, Sam, have only ever once come across the boulangerie vending machine one. In fact, it had its own little hut, and I was riding towards Cahors. I was on a 2-day ride from the Pyrenees to Bordeaux. And remember, it was sort of early morning. It might have been day 1. And it was the middle of nowhere. All around me was fields of canola grass or stuff like that. And it was lit up with neon signs. I've even got a lovely photo of it. And I went in there all excited. I had my coins because this was a coin-operated one. But the sad thing was I was there too early. It hadn't been stocked yet. So it was totally empty. Oh, may you only have almond croissants in the machines ahead. But I mean, Bretagne, Normandy, I mean, you could be up for wheels of camembert. You can be up for oysters I don't know how oysters would go on an ultra ride like this though. I mean, they are refrigerated. I'm just putting it out there. It's not like they've been out all day and left to simmer.
Well, you get vending machines of all sorts around here. I always seem to come across them when I don't need them, though. There's loads in my region here. There's fruit and veg ones. There's a pharmacy vending machine. I
saw a CBD one the other day.
Well, yeah, that would certainly get me.
That'd be interesting when you're sleep deprived. What sort of hallucinations were hitting you there, and why? Speaking of sleep deprivation, actually, this is something you've obviously had to deal with before with your previous ultra experience. But what is your plan in terms of distances, sleep, and things? You were talking about riding to your rhythm and riding to your routine, but what have you sort of thought about longer term over these 13 days, and what's your ideal circumstance?
Yeah, I'm thinking a sustainable amount should be 4 to 5 hours a night. The first day, because I'm starting at 8 a.m, I'm going to see how it goes that first night. I may well just nap that first night, potentially not sleep indoors. But then from there, I want to establish a routine where I particularly favour stopping early, starting early. Because I think a lot of people forget it's about how far you ride in 24 hours. You don't have to ride to 2 a.m. every night and then, get up at 6, 7 a.m. I much prefer stopping maybe 8, 9 p.m. because it's easier to check in if you're sleeping indoors, especially I find in France, sort of beyond 8 p.m, a lot of receptions seem to close. You can pick up resupplies for that night and the morning ahead of time. And then I much prefer riding into the morning than riding into night. I think those first few hours in the morning seem to fly by, and you're always looking forward to the sun coming up. That seems to give a boost of energy.
Huge boost. And the bird song for me, I love hearing the first bird calls as well. They sort of like the pretext of, oh my gosh, good things are about to come. It's like that golden hour is on its way.
And especially at this time of year where, maybe I'm going to sleep before it's dark, which does help and means I'm not having to go through that transition of riding into night. But then morning is going to come, it depends where I am in the country, but going up to the north, I'm going to start seeing light at 4 a.m. So I'm not going to be having to do too much riding at dark, hopefully.
I also find there's definitely less traffic earlier in the morning than there is later in an evening as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And I think it comes down to personal preference as well. I'm generally a morning person. I usually ride first thing in the morning. So it's something I'm very familiar with. looking forward to that first boulangerie that I come across. It is always good motivation for those first few hours.
Are you listening to the podcast as someone who is currently on a bike adventure, or maybe you're a bike traveller who's plotting out your next bikepacking trip? Well, if your adventure is going to be taking you through regions where clean water is hard to find, you can make a difference by carrying and delivering a water filter. My recent episode with Em Holbert highlights her amazing project, which is called the Water Cycle, and Em is encouraging other bike travellers to get in touch with her and get on board in water filter delivery. If you would like to get on board with this amazing initiative, send me an email, podcast@seektravelride.com, and I will put you in touch with Em directly so we can make this water cycle community grow even more expansive and bring clean water to more places that need it the most. Okay, now back to the episode. Listeners will be tuning into this, and, you know, I'm pushing this episode out before Sam has started, and it's the 15th of June that you do start. People are going to be able to dot watch this, though, aren't they? Like, you do actually have a dot tracking link that people can see as well, can't they?
Yep, that's right. I'll be carrying a GPS device, which has been provided by Follow My Challenge, and Dot Watcher, the website, very kindly hosting my map and commentary from a few very kind people. Belly, you might know one of them.
Yeah, there's a few of us there. I'm one of just a few. And I'm super stoked to be able to be sharing this. And so I guess everybody, I will be posting links in today's episode description with ways that you can follow Sam. I'll also share his Instagram handle, his social media links, and I will also be sharing commentary and posting it up on the socials as well. There's something awesome being a dot watcher and living vicariously through someone else's efforts. So I'm sure there's listeners that are thrilled to be able to be doing this as well. Can I ask something I should know, but I haven't? I've just assumed. Is the direction of travel up to you?
Yep. You can go either clockwise or anti-clockwise. You can start at any point along the route as well. That's why it was always interesting to me. I live in Manosque in the southeast of France, and it just happens to be a control point on the route. Saying that, there are choices you can make between the controls. You have to pass through 61, but there are points where you can have alternative or variant controls, as they call them, which I think it's sort of to give you that choice of whether you follow closer to the coast or you take the route's sort of slightly inland. There's a couple where in the high Alps you can miss out some of the passes, which maybe you're doing it, there's a possibility of them being closed at
snow season or something like that.
Yeah. Well, saying that, it's only possible to do this in summer months, but there's particularly one where I've avoided having to take a ferry, because I think I'd rather not have to take a ferry near at the Gironde, near Bordeaux, the Gironde River. I've
missed that ferry.
That's why I'm not taking it.
Yeah, there you go.
And then Manosque is on a variant route. The other route takes you further towards the south coast, so I'm a little bit inland. So yeah, I've chosen to go clockwise. I think mostly because I'm hoping to get a better prevailing wind up the west coast if it's more likely to come from the southwest. I know it's something you can't predict in advance, but inland in the east, there's less. If I'm heading south there, it's less at risk of having adverse wind. Yeah, I suppose the rest, it's quite interesting to look at the profile of my route. I go straight to the Pyrenees. So it should be the third day that I'm really hitting the Pyrenees.
I'll see you early on then. I will definitely see you somewhere on the road.
I was going to say relatively fresh, but even by the third day, it's that's when I'm in one gear mode. By then,
that's good. That could be my speed. I'm always good for bringing conversation though, Sam. So you can just tell me to shut up and point you to the boulangerie. It's up to you.
I think I may be happy to have someone else just talking to me for a while. you look at the profile and then the rest is flat for 3,500, 4,000 kilometers. Well, relatively flat. I was saying about Brittany being, it's lumpy. It is lumpy in places, but yeah, no mountain passes until I get back round to Jura and in the Alps. And then it's pretty much once I'm through the Alps, it's only 150, 200 kilometers back from there. So
that mentally will be a big deal too, knowing that you're through the mountains and you're almost home.
Yeah, but in some way it's a route which I've done a couple of times. So sometimes the roads you've done before are worse because especially when it's that close to the end, I sort of know, it's 70 kilometers from here. Like that's 3 or 4 hours and
not 12 and a half days deep.
Yeah, they feel very long at that point. I think that's contextualized. Sometimes it's best just to get on with it, not count down. I'm a person who I don't have stats on my Garmin. I don't know how some people have like time and distance showing all the time. It would just drive me crazy.
Yeah, the best thing I ever did was put my Garmin on like battery saver mode, and so unless it blips with a direction, I see nothing. And mentally, just gave me so much more out of my rides being able to do that.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to it's controlling the controllables. I can control the effort I put in, how I manage myself over that time. I can't control which way the wind's blowing, what the weather is doing. A lot of that determines the speed you're going at. If I'm doing what I need to do, the outcome takes care of itself in that sense. It's something which, when I talk to people about sort of goals for events, saying sort of what position or even how many kilometers you're going to do a day, to a large extent, that's out of your control. When I'm going across the Pyrenees, I know I'm not going to do the same distance each day as on the flatter bits. And even on the flatter bits, if I get the wind in my face all day, it may be 2/3 of what I could do if I got a tailwind. So it's just things I've got to accept. I've got to just play into what is under my control and trust that the rest is going to play out.
Keep eating, keep fueling, keep drinking water, and get your, try and aim for your 4 or 5 hours sleep a night and give your best efforts. And the rest, you've done everything in your control, like you said. Well, Sam, I am super pumped. I'm super chuffed to even be a tiny little part of what you're doing here. And I can't wait to see this all unfold for you to help provide updates. Listeners, as I said, I'll be providing links in the show notes. For those of you who like to listen to things straight away and go somewhere, Sam, a quick shout out to your Instagram page.
My personal Instagram is at tourist.routier, and tourist has got an E on the end. Routier hasn't got an E on the end. Yeah, I changed my handle to be on brand. We'll see how it goes. I may keep it that way. I
think you'll be proud of this handle. You will. Yeah. This will be your badge. So, listeners, follow along, check out the links in the show notes. And Sam, I'll put you on the spot here, but so looking forward to hopefully doing a full-length episode with you when this is all in the history books.
Oh, great. Yeah, well, I'm not trying to sort of put pressure on myself, but I think, I'm going into this open-eyed to really get a great experience out of it. And, I can't wait to sort of, I think once you get a few hours onto the roads or even a couple of days, I'm just really looking forward to getting into that routine and seeing all of this country.
Yeah, the whole lap around, 4,800 kilometres. Here you come. Who knows however many almond croissants are in that tally as well. But we will be keeping note. Thank you so much, Sam. And bon route and courage.
Thank you. Merci Bella.
There you go, listeners. And now you know all about the Tour de France Randonneur. And if, like me, you're excited for what's coming up for Sam, make sure to click the links in the podcast description show notes so that you can track his dot moving across the country. Sam, I really hope that you have the best of the weather, the best of the pastries at the boulangerie, and an absolute blast of a time as you make your way through this route. And listeners, let's all wish him a bon courage and see how this journey unfolds. I'd like to give a shout out now to you, my absolute legends of a superfan, who have gone ahead and supported me and the podcast by buying me a coffee. Each week, these messages of support for the show come through, and it really does fill me with joy to read them. This week, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Velo Manuela, who said, "The podcast basically pushed me through Argentina's desert, pampa, and steppe. Well, Velo Manuela, thank you so much for supporting the show. And I have to say, I'm super stoked to find out you were tuning in during your actual adventure through South America there. Some amazing landscapes that you were going through, and I hope that the weather was kind to you and that you took some inspiration from the podcast guests and put it as fuel for your own journey there as well. Thanks for being a dead set legend and supporting me and the podcast. And listeners, if you would like to do as Velo Manuela has done, you too can support me and the podcast. Simply go to buymeacoffee.com/Seek Travel Ride. Buy me a coffee, a few virtual brews, but more importantly, leave me a message and let me know what is it that you love about the podcast and where is your next bike adventure taking you. And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.